You make me nervous, dude.
Why?
Because you know shit.
I do.
Okay, no more beers with you.
Right.
Do you know how to use a microphone?
I doubt it. We'll see. Give it a shot.
You kind of want to make out with it.
Really?
Yeah. Like fillet it a little.
Does that give me extra points if I make out the microphone? Sweet.
Let's see.
All right, so these lights are really bright. I was actually telling Stephanie, our wonderful sponsor, getting up here doesn't bother me. I don't have a fear of public speaking. What I have a fear of is I have to stand right here. I have a tendency to do this a lot.
Don't do that.
So I won't do that. All right, so back in 1978, I was about 8 years old. I had an uncle who I adored. And he was the guy who would wrestle with me. He was, he was my teenage uncle. And so he was cool. And I was 8, therefore I was not. And my uncle would always take me with him and hang out with his cool older friends. And we would always go to the lake. And at this point in time, I lived in the beautiful suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky. And, Hickville, USA. So we actually go down to the river and we jump off cliffs, or they jump off cliffs, and I sat and watched them jump off cliffs because I was only 8, and he knew if I jumped off a cliff, my mother would kill him. So I watched them, and then all of a sudden, because they were older, 14, 15-year-old, they would smoke. Ironically enough, what they were smoking, I never saw a pack of cigarettes, ever. As they continued to smoke, they began to try to be funny and thought they were funny and got a little bit different than when we first got to the lake. Well, at this point in time is when I become the prop for my uncle's humor. And my uncle decides that this would be a really good time to show off to his friends with his 8-year-old nephew. Now, for those of you who don't know the South, they have these really cool black clouds that have a tendency to drift through the water. Anybody know what I'm talking about yet? Not carp. They're water moccasins. And water moccasins have a tendency to travel in packs, and you can see them. And as human beings with half a brain who aren't high, you know to get out of the water or not to get in the water. So at this point in time, my uncle, who by the way was about 6'3", 350, I was 8. I wasn't as big as I am now, believe it or not, but I was still a pretty good sized kid. Decides to grab me, waits for the cloud to go through the water, and tosses me in. Hence my fear of snakes. Now, his story is that I literally never hit the water, that I superhumanly stopped and walked on water to get my ass back up on land. Did I mention he was high? Okay. So that is to give you a foundation of my fear of snakes to tell you about 10 years later, which is even much more fun. At this point in time, I have a very, very unhealthy phobia of snakes. Now, for those of you who are going, oh, but what about little garter snakes? Oh, what about the other cute little one over there? What about the one that doesn't bite? What about the one that won't squeeze you to death? I don't give a shit. The fat, bald guy does not do snakes. So, 15 years old, I move away from home because, well, I had found a girlfriend. My parents were moving. I had a girlfriend. I had touched boobies. I'm not moving. So as I move into my basement apartment in Dickinson, North Dakota, go Midgets. Are you afraid of our mascot now? So I move out on my own. I live in a basement apartment. I'm working 40 hours a week, going to school, being responsible, doing all these things. And my very best friend in the whole world decides that he needs to move in with me. Fine, I can use the rent money. So he moves in with me, and we are broke. I mean, ramen broke. So a friend of his, we are not in this apartment 3 weeks. He's my best friend. As my best friend, do you think he is fully aware of my fear of snakes? Yes, good answer. So this idiot comes to me and says, hey, we need to pet sit for Bill. I'm like, Bill who? You know, Bill in our algebra class. He's going on vacation for a week. He needs somebody to watch his snakes. My direct quote as a 15-year-old young man is, are you out of your fucking mind? You know we're not doing this. Rob, we are not, under any circumstances, watching the snake. He's like, no, not the snake, it's two. Not happening, Rob. Not on your life, not on my life. We're not watching the snakes. Period. End of conversation. So later when the snakes come in the house, they are both in huge packing boxes with a huge 30-pound metal grate over the top. And he's like, see? You're good. That little skinny bastard looked me right in the eye and said, you're good. So we watched TV, and I mean to tell you, this entire time, I mean, it wasn't because, I mean, I am a fat guy and I sweat a lot, but this was not why I was sweating in my own apartment in Dickinson, North Dakota. I am sweating profusely. I am shaking profusely. And then all of a sudden I realized it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I literally had been sitting on the couch staring at these boxes the entire time. Oh, you laugh. It's not that funny. So I decided it's probably a good idea for me to go to bed. So I go to bed. And I take all the towels I can find in the house, and I shove them underneath my door. And I take my dresser, and I put it in front underneath the door. I am scared shitless of snakes. I can't sleep because there's snakes in my house. So me, being the guy who's not leaving my room at this point, about a week earlier I had been really sick, so I had some NyQuil on the dresser. I drank 3/4 of a bottle of NyQuil, hoping it will help me sleep. My fear of snakes is so potent and so real to me, I don't sleep. So my alarm goes off. I knew it was going to go off. I was awake. So at this point, it takes me 15 minutes to get all the shit out in front of my door so I can go to the kitchen. And by the way, I was 15 and I was broke, but my mom, God bless her soul, bought me a coffee maker. And you know, in those days, this was one of the very first ones where you could preset the timer on it, and the coffee was made. So I walk out and I'm kind of stumbling around, eyes half open, half closed, and I reach for the coffee pot. Yeah. And as I reach for the coffee pot, one of those little snakes, you know, it's just a little garter snake, wraps itself around my arm. Now, for those of you who want to know how I handled it, I couldn't tell you. The next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. I had literally gone into some kind of traumatized coma, whatever the hell they called it. And of course, my friend Rob comes to visit me in the hospital, and he's like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, dude, no. He's like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I said, I'm really sorry. He goes, why are you sorry? I said, because your fucking ass is homeless.